Do you want to talk about the Apple III as well? Because you don't often see Apple IIIs. It's kind of unusual to see an Apple III, especially in New Zealand.
Yeah, so this is my Apple III. So the Apple III has a really cool sort of history. So Apple had the Apple II, and they were worried that their company wouldn't survive just with one computer, because back in those days everyone was releasing new versions of computers every year. And they also wanted to make a business-friendly computer. So a lot of people ended up using the Apple IIs for their business, but it was more of a hobbyist machine. So you'd need to open it up, you'd need to add 80-column card, you'd need to put your own card in for the drives, maybe a serial card. Whereas the 3 came with all of that built in. So it came with the floppy drive, it came with the serial, the 80 columns. And they were worried about IBM coming with the PC.
Yeah, because this was released in the year prior to the IBM PC coming out. This is 1980.
And it's got a really cool architecture. So it has Apple II compatibility, but it still uses a 6502, but it's higher speed, and it can address more memory via a fancy bank switching circuit that it's got in it, and with the 5 meg hard drive, I think earlier than IBM shipped with hard drives.
Yeah.
So it was pretty modern for the time. And businesses could buy it and plug it in, and it worked. Everything was already there. And I think at the time it was also the version of VisiCalc with the most RAM, so you could have the biggest spreadsheets on the Apple III. So this one's got a modern hard drive emulator inside, which is using the booti USB emulator, and a program switcher called Boss, which is from 1993, so it's definitely modern for the Apple III. And then instead of using the internal floppy, I'm just using a SD floppy 2, so it makes it easier to switch disk images, and the external floppy drive. So yeah, the story about the Apple III where it went bad.
Dropped 3 inches?
Yeah, so they rushed it to market, and there was a few problems with it when customers got it. There's like various different sources you can see about what caused it, whether it was overheating, whether it was poor manufacturing. To cram everything into the case, they designed the case early before they knew the motherboard size. It actually has like a daughter board for the RAM plugged in, and so there's another theory that it was the daughter board coming loose. But anyway, regardless of it, the first ones that shipped out had a lot of failures. And it led to a poor reputation in the market. And then ultimately, it ended up getting cancelled. By 1984, it was no longer for sale, whereas the Apple IIs went on into the 90s. So, the computers they were worried weren't going to sustain the company actually became the lifeblood of the company the whole way through. But, I mean, a revolutionary computer and like really well designed. The operating system was much advanced from Apple II.
And that was ProDOS, or was it something
else? SOS.
Yeah.
So SOS did get ported back onto the Apple II as ProDOS, but it had device drivers. So rather than your hardware device having a small amount of ROM, you install drivers into your boot disk to load the different devices, had named devices, named paths. It was really pretty impressive for 1980.
Before the PC.
Before the PC. It feels very Unixy because you've got device drivers that you install. When I wanted to install the USB hard drive, someone's written a device driver for block devices, a couple of years ago to copy that onto my boot floppy, and then it boots.
Yeah. So it was a business machine. Were there any games for it, or?
It was like 4 games.
Really,
it's definitely not a gaming machine.
Yeah.
It actually did have good graphics modes, and I've got a converter from Joe's Computer Museum he sells little plugs on the outside where you can plug in a CGA screen or an RGB screen and actually see the color graphics.
Right.
So the resolution was 280 by 192 in 16 colors, so it was better than the Apple II in terms of colors, but no one programmed games for it.
And it only came with, I mean, the Monitor 3 was the monitor that came with it. Was there ever a color monitor that came out for it, or was it just the Apple III, the Monitor 3?
I believe so. I think that was the first monitor that Apple produced before people would use like Sanyo monitors.
Yeah.
And then the Monitor 3 actually became quite popular for using with your Apple II.
The Apple II, yeah, I had one. Yeah.
Because I think that was out before the more modern Apple II monitor came along. And it's got this thin mesh on the front to stop reflections.
Yeah.
Which can get damaged quite easily, but luckily mine's still pristine. So
I had one. I mean, that's a really good collection, because not only have you got the Apple III there, you've got the profile on top, which I dare say must have been quite hard to get here in New Zealand, especially.
It doesn't work. No, it's at that state where it might work and it might not work.
Yeah.
It hasn't been tested, but I'm almost certain it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it looks nice.
But it looks the part. Yeah, definitely.
And you could use the profiles later on in the Apple IIs and on the Lisa. But they were made originally for the Apple III.
And how was the keyboard compared to the Apple II keyboard? You know, this is probably, 1979, so this is probably a year or so before the Apple III. Was the keyboard on this a better keyboard? You know, obviously it's got the numeric keypad.
I can't speak to whether the keys are nicer to feel or not. I'm not really a keyboard aficionado, but it had the keypad, it had the cursor keys, which the original Apple II didn't. It supported lowercase, which the original Apple II didn't without a mod. And the other thing it has, which is kind of funny, I haven't seen it on other computers, is the arrow keys actually have two positions. So you got a light touch and then a heavy touch. So you can go fast scrolling and slow scrolling based on whether you push it that little extra.
Right, okay, interesting.
So I think Apple screwed over the owners of the Apple III. They said that it was going to be the next big thing, you should buy it, and then they just continued it and showed it no love. But the community, back in the day, they basically kept the machines running until probably into the 90s. There was a company selling RAM expansions. There was a magazine still running into the 90s.
So did they ship with 128K, or was it smaller than that by default?
Yeah, it was 128K in the first version, and then I think 256K most of them were shipped with.
Wow, that was an awful lot for 1980.
Yeah. And I mean that contributed to the high price. Which I can't remember what it was, but it was quite high. But yeah, it's a really cool computer and a really cool history. If you want to learn more about it, there's a podcast you can search for called Drop 3 Inches, which I've listened to 3 times. I love that whole series. And also the latest advent of computing has I think it would be around about the April 2023 episode of Advent of Computing. Has a section on the Apple III as well.
Nice.
So yeah, both
awesome
good podcasts.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank
Cheers.
You.